I can remember my first speech like it was yesterday. It was on an impromptu speech day. I walked up to the plastic container and grabbed a blank white piece of paper, which meant I could choose whatever topic I wanted. So I chose to talk about my classes and teachers for 1 minute. So for my last speech, I decided to do the same and do a tribute speeches for all the teachers I had this year. The past 2 senior classes told me that this year had the best set of teachers by far, and they were not wrong. The teachers this year have lived up and exceeded expectations. The teacher I will begin with first is Mrs. Kett. I have her at the beginning and end of my day for AP Literature and obviously speech. After having Mr. Small for AP Lang, I was looking forward to a much more student-friendly AP Literature class. Mrs. Kett did a great job with the class. She made the class fun, interactive, and beneficial. She helped me with my theses, papers, and many essays. Having Mrs. Kett in the morning was a great way to start off my day. Since I'm already talking about Mrs. Kett, I'm going to go ahead and talk about her speech class also. I hate public speaking, and it's one of my biggest fears, but speech has greatly helped me with it. But what I like most about speech class is getting the opportunity to know you better through the free time at the end of class. Thank you, Mrs. Kett. Next is Mr. Siemens. He is one of the funniest and most relatable teachers I have ever had. Second hour class is usually when I am most tired, but this year I was always wide awake and looking forward to it. Some days it was reading an interesting chapter from Colson or doing some questions on it. Other days it might be doing an intriguing presentation on a current day controversial issue with a biblical worldview. Personally, my favorite days were what we learned days. During these days, throughout the year, Siemens would get to show off his storytelling ability and bring joy to the class with this gift. Whether it be through a story about loudly trash-talking a random person's funeral on the highway, or a story about his famous cousin Daniel Tosh, or jumping out of a van for a girl. I enjoyed listening to them all. Mr. Siemens, thank you, and keep telling your stories. After Bible, I have third hour with AP Statistics with Mrs. Watson. Last year I had soul-crushing and spirit-breaking AP Calculus with Mrs. Vandervoort, nearly an aneurysm. So this year was a drastic shift in class material. Mrs. Watson is the most understanding teacher I have ever had. Her students are her #1 priority. She's almost as nice as my grandma. Every day she would ask us what homework, tests, projects, or other time-consuming things we had in other classes so she could plan her homework around it. Some days in class she could tell we were very stressed about something later on in the day, so she would give us our work day. Mrs. Watson gives all of the students the help they need to get the grade they want, and she will answer any question, no matter how dumb it might be or if she had just answered it. Mrs. Watson, you are the most considerate teacher I've ever had. Thank you. Fourth hour is AP Human Geography with Mr. Overton. I had him last year for U.S. history and liked him enough to take another class with him this year, which speaks volumes to the kind of teacher he is. His class has caused me to think more critically than any class I've ever had before. Every time I would make a statement, he would break it down to its most simple form and ask me questions about it. For example, I would say America is one of the richest nations in the world, and Mr. Overton would then ask me, define the term nation and what does it mean to be rich? For the most part, the questions were productive, but sometimes they could be a little annoying. Other days, when he would be talking about a lesson, Overton would relate it to a Bible verse and give a little mini sermon. One time, he even came up with a whole sermon in class to give to his church the following Sunday. Mr. Overton, thank you. Surprisingly, Mr. Siemens is not the only good red-headed teacher I had this year. I have been blessed with having Mr. Wesley, aka Strawberry Shortcake with a metal ankle. He is the best music teacher and a conductor a student could wish for. I took chorus class my sophomore year to go on a Disney trip, but ended up getting so much more out of my 3 years of course with Mr. Wesley. He is a great role model for young men and has lots of great advice. My favorite moment with Mr. Wesley was when he took men's chamber choir through Chinatown on our New York trip. When we were walking through Chinatown, we walked by this fish he thought was dead, but it started flopping, and he acted like a little girl about it, got really scared. A classic stereotype about gingers is that they have no souls, but that is the complete opposite when it comes to Mr. Wesley. Mr. Wesley, thank you. For my 6th hour, I have AP Economics with Mr. Merz, and had him for last semester for 7th hour for government. Out of any teacher I've ever had, I've learned the most from Mr. Merz. He is a great teacher in government. He is able to teach from multiple perspectives and forces students to think from multiple viewpoints. He has read a plethora of books on the subject, which makes him more than qualified to teach the class. Next year's class will be truly missing out on not having him in government. But somehow Merz is even a better teacher in AP economics. He is able to describe complex concepts to students better than any teacher I've ever seen. Sometimes he uses simple life situations or funny references he has overheard from students. He's willing to help any student or answer any question about economics, and I know because I ask a lot of questions in that class. If you put in any work into his class, he will pass both the micro and macro exam. But Merz does not just stop with teaching economics and government. Every day he gives a sermon which shows how much he cares about his students outside the classroom. Thank you, Mr. Merz. My senior year at LCA has been my favorite year at this school, and not because it is my last. I would attribute most of my fondness for this year to my teachers. The teachers this year are more than just teachers. You all have taught me many lessons that are not just applicable in the classroom, but in life. If I wanted to learn information about certain subjects, I would just go on YouTube. But with the teachers at LCA, I get an education and a great relationship. So to my great teachers this year, thank you.